Hi, so I'm going to be sharing my capstone project. It's called Future Piece, and I'll start with the trailer and then explain a bit more about it.
Come on into the Funk Bunk Bar. I hope you can help this I just can't even move nothing.
I never chose to love so sweet a rose. I suppose just maybe loneliness and the gloom.
Future Piece is an interactive VR TV series. Episodes are 3 to 6 minutes long. Each episode has a new mission related to the central goal of banding together to outsmart the tower. The first season will have 9 to 12 mini episodes, pending development time and resources. Each season will have story arcs and draw some inspiration from the hero's journey. Episode 1, the pilot episode, is my capstone project, which I'll explain more in detail for this presentation. So, some of the backstory of this world and this VR TV show, where it takes place. It's a new galaxy, not a new galaxy, but it's not our current galaxy. So Earth has become uninhabitable, and we now live in a galaxy called Mythic Brinker. That's where the story takes place. And what's happening is a group of people who were former world leaders have banded together and are exploiting the majority of the population to take their resources. They're referred to as the Tower, and they also rule from this mysterious area called the Tower. The opposition to them is a group of ragtag individuals. They are called the Freedom Fighters. They are working to slowly dismantle the tower through sharing resources and intelligently outsmarting the tower. So the player is, if they choose, on the side of the Freedom Fighters. Why interactive VR TV and why now? So in 2019, we saw a pretty sharp influx of Oculus sales and also just general headsets across the board, HTC Vives as well as Oculus. They're currently, or not currently, right now there's more than 50 million, but as of 2020, there were about 50 million headset owners in the US alone. So, we can kind of like to get some like TV viewer comparisons. There were about 50 million Netflix subscribers in the US and Canada in 2017. That number has, of course, since grown. Year over year, we're seeing Oculus and VR users kind of just keep growing. As Meta has now bought Oculus and is investing in kind of like mass production and lower cost. They have really pushed VR headsets into the mainstream. We've seen that with commercials that we all probably see for the Oculus headset, the Meta headset. We're seeing that there's this push where it's moving beyond the gaming community. And so as that's happening, there also needs to be content to fulfill that need. So people are watching TV shows and movies in VR. And so I think now is a great time to add interactivity to that and give people who have headsets content to watch and interact with that might not be a traditional gaming scenario because maybe they don't identify with being a gamer. Maybe they don't feel they have the time, but maybe they're coming from, a watching TV background, someone kind of like me. So this brings up sort of like a general question of, as TV and film, in games, as well as even music videos, we can say merge and the lines become more and more blurred as these technologies sort of evolve and morph and cross boundaries and intersect. how do we define why, like, or specifically, why am I defining my project as a TV episode that's with interactivity versus a game? And I think that really boils down to the outcome is predetermined. So while there is gameplay activity that's reactive in the moment, you're going to win this episode, whereas other episodes you're going to lose, as you see in TV shows where, you know, the main character sometimes has a really bad day, and that kind of brings you through to the next story point of how do they handle that, what happens because of that, versus games which tend to branch and sometimes infinite possibilities depending on choices that the player makes. So this kind of goes through different sort of like thought branches on that. Something that's kind of interesting is we can look at something like Bandersnatch, which is made by the Black Mirror people. It was distributed on Netflix as a movie, but you did have choices. And so I think in the past we used to define a game as something where you have choices and can make decisions in real time that affect what you're seeing. So versus something like Oxenfree, which has many, many branches. It was distributed on a gaming platform on Steam, but I think because of the interactive story nature, Netflix bought it and I think is developing more content related to that. Or on the other hand, we see like the rise of scripted and directed cutscenes with, you know, real actors that are being kind of cut into very much gaming worlds. So it sort of depends, one, on how much interactivity is, if it's predetermined, but also which platform it's being released on, because they are becoming so intercorrelated today. So the rest is all of this whole presentation is aimed at my classmates. I've made different presentations. Some is pitch deck, some is my asset deck. But this is mostly to kind of do a post-mortem on what I learned throughout development on making my capstone project. So I'll kind of go through it chronologically. We start out in the first episode on the deck.
Oh, hello, new friend. Yes, do come inside. If you see the line coming out of your hand, you can point it at the ground until it's white instead of red. Then click your button on your hand. You should be able to end.
So I added that after I had my husband play it, who it was kind of his first time doing any interactivity in VR. It was his second time in a headset in general. Because this is aimed for people who are newer to VR and maybe haven't played a game, I forgot that maybe they need help knowing how to teleport, because they've probably never done it before. And so I added in this little like friendly voice to say, hey, if the line is red, you can't go anywhere. If it's white, you can move there. Because he actually couldn't get inside the bar, and that was something I'd overlooked. The other things I want to bring up for this is we can kind of see here for the Funk Bunk Bar where the first episode takes place. I made this in Blender. Unity kind of tells you can export Blender files as .blend files. Don't do that. Just export them as .fbx files and you'll save yourself a lot of headaches. Sometimes like the meshes just won't show. And it took me a while to figure that out, but don't do it. I did bake this mesh once it was in Unity. I don't think I did it in the most optimal way. I think I would, and going forward, have done it before I brought it into my main project. I would have just like been baking all along the way, every portion, like baking each stick and then recreating them, kind of more of that style. I was not able to get my frame rate to 90. I guess I could play around a bit more, but it was at 72. It would seem to be working fine on the build, at least on my Oculus Quest 2. I disabled shadows, except for big shadows. And then we can go to the next area. So this is a lot of my experience revolves around audio because that's what would happen in the real world. So beep boop, upon crossing this first threshold, the instructional audio of how to teleport shuts off. And then you enter a trigger zone that you can't see, but that's when Beep Boop and the other character, Millie, have their audio cued.
Hello and welcome. Yes, come on in. Come on in to the Funk Bank Bar. My name is Beep Boop, and this here is the tower.
So they sort of give the background of the story and like introduce you to the world, introduce you to themselves. And we'll kind of see audio. I can see my time is going. So before you get your alert, your mission, you can hang out, you can play some songs on the jukebox, and have a drink. So the jukebox was set up pretty simply. I put it on the right-hand controller, which going back, I wouldn't do that again. But I just had the colliders of the controller with the colliders and triggers on the keys were what triggered each song. All the songs were on one audio source, and it was, like checking if one was played, it would stop that previous one. One of the keys I also added in, I wanted to have different dancer groups for each song. That didn't happen. So there's just one song that enables this dancer. She's a Mixamo character, and then I just put on a custom shader that I made for another project, this grid shader. And so it's someone to kind of like dance with on the dance floor. You can bring your drink there. The drink is a shader, a liquid shader. And there's also this wobble script on it. I didn't write the wobble script, and I followed a tutorial on the liquid shader that sort of toggles from filled to not filled. So there's the cup, and then there's another mesh within the cup that has that shader as the shader, and depending on the angles with the wobble script, it'll toggle the transparency versus opacity of the shader. And that's that. So then you get your mission via the radio. This was an audio source that was separate from other audio sources. And this, I used a coroutine to delay the time. So I just waited a certain amount of seconds before this was played. It wasn't played off of a trigger like other ones or an event. It was just like a time wait.
Alert, this is breaking news. Breaking news for the freedom fighters. Yes, there's been an attack on Dondai. If anyone's close, perhaps placed on the island, tell someone is here. That's all.
So that's how you get your info of what your mission is. And Beep Boop also follows it up to kind of clarify where you need to go, what you need to do, what's going to happen in case you kind of missed anything.
Alert, this.
So now
and you'd wake them snakes
mission begins.
Once you open them up and they're coming out, you shoot them. My laser gun's up there, and if you need a better angle, you can come back through this bar, and we have a couple more spaceships out front. I'll hook up these snakes.
This actually doesn't have the explosions, but there were eventually explosions, so I put the wrong video in here. But a bit about this I used object pooling for the snakes because I'd never done it and wanted to try it out for a little optimization. I probably should have done it on the projectiles as well. The explosion, which you don't see in this video, was particle system. I used an event system for when the planet was shot that would start the enemies being enabled from their object pool and then disabled back into the object pool upon being shot. And it also linked to the score UI canvas. And when you go from 30 to 0, you are congratulated, you completed your mission. And at that point, you're done. You can go back into the bar if you like, or exit the experience.
The planet.
So these were kind of postmortem things that I touched on throughout. So I won't go through those again. This is how to experience it in VR. I'm going to try to put it on SideQuest, but for now, if you have SideQuest, you can download this APK. And that is that. Thank you.